Spiritual Gumbo, the Maccabees. So right now we're going to be we're going to start at the 4th chapter, and we're going to do a quick little rundown of what happened this last chapter very quickly. So Judas takes over, fights some very hard-fought wars, ones that were crucial enough to change the atmosphere within the land. And this is where the zealots come from. If I didn't point that out in the last video, and I know I've said this before, but the zealots start during the Maccabean revolution. And the Pharisees, the Assyrians, are the people who are given credit for being like the powers behind that. And there's a reason why the Assyrian connection and the Pharisees, I'm going to keep driving on that and keep driving on it until the full connection is made. However, let's start at chapter 4, verse 1, and let's pick it on up. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen and 1,000 of the best horsemen, and removed out of the camp by night, to the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Jews, and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Judas heard thereof, he himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army, which was at Emmaus. Stop right there. So this guy, Gorgias, says, look, I got 5,000 people, 1,000 of the best horsemen. We're about to ride in on these dudes at night, smash them all when they don't even see it coming. Got our guides with us, so we're going to be able to get right to them. Judas hears the words now, and I understand in this term they're calling them the Jews. And the idea is that these aren't just Levites or Benjamites or Jehudites. You get what I'm talking about? This is the more than likely the three of the groups all together. And since they're not one group, they just call them Jews. I think it's a derogative term the more I think about it. However, let's just keep going on. To the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Jews, and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Judas heard thereof, he himself removed the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army, which was at Emmaus. So what he did was, bam, I'm about to do a preemptive strike on you and a counter strike, because there's 40,000 men who all together that were there. You've only took 5,000, so there's another 35,000 there and another 6,000 horsemen resting. If you hit, 20% of those guys, 30% of those guys up, you know what I mean? That's a way greater devastation than taking out that 5,000 and then 1,000. Here we go. Verse 4. I'll pick up in the middle of verse 3, and then I'll go. Or at the start of verse 3, and I'll just go from there. Now when Judas heard thereof, he himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army, which was at Emmaus, while as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. In the meantime, came Gorgias by night into the camp of Judas, and when he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains, for he said, these fellows flee from us. So when they weren't there, he went even further out of his way. So as opposed to going back to his camp, he keeps pushing further out. And this cat has nothing but time now to get to his camp, who are resting, to put it in. Let's go ahead and do it. Verse 6, but as soon as it was day, Judas shoot himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. And when they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and campus round about with horsemen, and these were expert of war. So stop right there. These weren't just anybody fighting. These are cats who you could tell have been there, done that, have killed people. Then Judas said to the men that were with him, fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before and destroy this host before our face this day. That so all the heathen may know that there is no one who delivereth, that there is so that the heathen may know that there is one who delivereth and save Israel. There we go. Let's just go and stop right here and just catch up. So what's happened is that Judas shows up, and let me just read it to you again, so that way you can't get it messed up. But as soon as it was day, this is verse 6, Judas shoot himself in the plain with 3,000 men. So these are 3,000 men with him. Hold on, comma, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. Stop. These dudes didn't have weapons or armor. They're just riding. Wow. That's deep. Now that right there takes some nuts, some serious ones, because I don't think people really understood, like, when you looked at these guys are experts at war and you're not even armed and you just don't want to die, but you're realizing like these dudes really know what the hell is going on, it changes everything. So that's why Judas was like, hold up. And that's why it was a big deal that he had a breastplate once again and had a harness. Can you feel me? And this is why he took old boy's sword. Right, because he put together his own outfit. It's starting to make sense now. So, these are people who don't have weapons, and they're not armed. If you skip forward into the future, think about Paul and people having to stone him constantly. And that's in the future, so they're even less armed. Here we go. Verse 8. Then Judas said to the men that were with him, fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. And he goes into how, the Red Sea, Pharaoh, and all that stuff, right? But what he's saying is that he said, let's pray, man. Let's cry into heaven. Once again, these dudes do a lot of what they call crying out. So, and if the Most High hears your cry, whether you or I agree with whatever's going on, doesn't matter, because the Most High is operating on a whole other set of rules. You know what I'm saying? His ways are not like ours. His thoughts are not like ours. But however, let me just keep pushing. Verse 11. No, verse 12. Then the strangers lifted up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. One moment. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle, but they that were with Judas sounded their trumpets. So they joined the battle, and the heathen, being discomfited, fled into the plain. Howbeit, all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword, for they pursued them unto Gazers, and unto the plains of Idumea, and Azotus, and Jamnia, so that they were slain of them as many as 3,000 men. Stop right there. Now, even though it's the same number of people with him that were killed, so 3,000 people who got killed, and there were 3,000 people with him, but they're saying these dudes fell by the sword. Now, what I want you guys to keep in mind, these Assyrian dudes showed up, mighty men, and all this, that, and the other. Now, the presumptive thought is that people got disarmed and got killed with their own weapons. The more logical thought is that out of the 3,000, all those guys weren't not armed. Just saying that most of the 3,000 weren't armed, because there's no way that 3,000 incorporated the Assyrians. There's no way, because they came ready to fight with his father. They joined themselves to his father. And once again, they weren't under persecution. However, let's just keep it pushing. So these men, right, they get messed up by hearing the trumpets. All the noise makes them, so they run out to the plains. Once, like I said, guys get disarmed, stuff like that, right? Tackled, swords taken off of them, get killed. 3,000 dudes get killed in total. So let's say one for every person that was with Judas got a kill, per se. Now what we're looking at is that they went to Idumea, Azotus, and Jamnia, right? Now, these are all places that are known of. I'm going to carry on to that in a moment. This is verse 16. This done, Judas returned again with his host from pursuing them, and said to the people, be not greedy of the spoils, inasmuch as there is a battle before us, and Gorgias and his host are here by us in the mountain. But stand ye now against our enemies and overcome them, and after this ye may boldly take the spoils. So he's like, don't get greedy and start filling up your sacks and all that stuff, because we got to fight. You know, you don't want to be boggled down and weighed down with this stuff. Just catch this right over here in the mountains, just right around the way. Get ready. We win, then we do it. As Judas was not yet speaking, verse 19. As Judas was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain, who when they perceived that the Jews had put their host to flight and were burning the tents, for the smoke that was declared what was done, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. Now stop right there. They're comparing the camps of these people to host. Right on? You have to realize that there's a common theme. Now, the more common the theme is, more than likely this. When the Most High tells the people through the prophets several times that the host of heaven are praised by the people, which is one of the falling outs, it's more than likely to believe that these same hosts are hosts that are helpful or a hindrance in these battles. Let's go ahead and just keep it going. But we have to also keep in mind that the book of the Maccabees is written in a historical text. So they're trying to take away things that might make a person say, well, I've never seen that, so that's not logical. Therefore, we're not going to allow that to be pushed through into the historical lexicon. Now let's go ahead and keep it pushing. We're going to read verse 19 on up again. As Judas was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain, who, when they perceived that the Jews had put their host to flight and were burning the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. When therefore they perceived these things, they were sore afraid. And seeing also the host of Judas in the plain ready to fight, they fled every one into the land of strangers. Then Judas returned to spoil the tents. When they got much gold and silver and blue silk and purple of the sea and great riches, after this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving and praised the Lord in heaven, because it is good, because his mercy endureth forever. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Now all the strangers that had escaped came and told Lysias what had happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he were done unto Israel, nor such things as the king commanded him were come to pass. So stop right there. So he's saying, first off, he would have never done this to the Israelites in the first place. That's not how I would have went about it. Second off, this is not what I would have seen coming about the situation if I had been sent to go do it. So it was a double whammy for this dude. Okay? This Lysias cat. Let's keep it pushing. Verse 27. No, verse 26. Now all the strangers that had escaped, this is 26, came and told Lysias what had happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he would were done unto Israel, nor such things as the king commanded him were come to pass. So once again, what he would have done is not what happened. You feel what I'm saying? Like, I would have dusted these cats if you know, and not that I would have went out of my way, but I would have dusted these cats if that was the case. You know what I'm saying? And there wouldn't have been no questions about it. And then the king said to smash on these dudes anyway. And that still didn't happen. So either way, once again, like I'm trying to tell y'all, it's a double whammy for this dude. And back in those kind of days, failure normally meant death. Verse 28. In the following year, therefore, Lysias gathered together 70,000 choice men of foot and 5,000 horsemen that he might subdue them. 60,000 men. That's crazy. So they came into Idumea and pitched their tents at Bethsura, and Judas met them with 10,000 men. And when he saw the mighty army, listen, and when he saw that mighty army, not mighty host, mighty army. See, understand this stuff it's not the same. And the play on words will have you thinking they're the same. They're not the same, y'all. They're trying to confuse you. There were real life hosts, like angelic being, like things that were living in human skin, demigod type things, running around with people, doing stuff. Anyway, keeping it pushing. And we're at verse 30. And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who didst quell who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gavest the host of strangers into thy hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel, and let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away. Let them quake at their destruction, and cast them down with the sword of them that love thee. And cast them down with the sword of them that love thee. And let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So, cast down with the sword of them that love thee. So, he's saying right now, pretty much, let me just break down this part of the prayer before it gets any crazier. He's like, God, I know you've delivered mighty men into the hands of David. I know that you've given hosts into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul. Right on. Can you dig it? You feel me? You know what I'm saying? He said, look, I need for them right now, as confident as they are, as happy as they are, I need for them to feel all their courage just melt away. Because we believe we want to be able to put them down because we believe and we love you. Right on? Can you feel me? And he's like, look. And he's saying, let all those that know who you are praise you. So pretty much he's like, everybody with me right now, we're all happy because this is like a war chant ritualistic thing before. I mean, it's the same stuff that you would see in any other type of faith. Anyway, man, let me go ahead and just keep it pushing. Verse 34. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the host of Lysias about 5,000 men, even before they were slain. Even before them were they slain. So, and there were slain host of Lysias, about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. So stop right there. There's host, and then the 5,000 men. It's trying to confuse people. You know what I'm saying? But really what it is that the host, it's trying to make it seem as it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. The host are with these particular number. They roll with a certain group of people. So like Judas Maccabees, his host might only be where he's at because he's the person who, in so many words, conjured it up, to put it lightly. So when you kill the person, right, who conjured the host, in essence, you kill the host. But let's say that all these dudes all believe in this host. So when you're killing them, you're taking power from that host because a part of its energy is the belief, the vibration that the people give off from their conscious effort to bring it into fruition. However, I have to keep it within the scripture and I got to keep going. Verse 35. Now when Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judas's soldiers, and they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went into Antiochia, that's right, and gathered together a company of strangers. And having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again into Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Sion. Now stop right there. Now, when it says all the host, right, assemble themselves together, that's not how it works for a real host. Why is it calling it an army one time and then calling it a host another? Can you dig it? There's something there. There's something even among them right now. I'd argue that the dirty, barbaric Assyrians may have brought something with them. However, I can't prove that, so I'm going to keep it pushing. But there is credence to what I just said later on. But we're going to keep it pushing for right now. Verse 37. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Sion. And they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profane, and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest, or in one of the mountains. Yea, and the priest's chambers pulled down. They rent their clothes, and made great lamentations, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpet, and cried toward heaven. Now stop right there. These guys go up here. We don't know who's who and who's who. This is why it says it's the host, right on? Because if they were all Israelites, can you dig it? Right. This is so crazy that they're not considered an army right now. So they're hosting these guys. They're the host. They go up, right? And what happens? They see the sanctuary in shambles. Everything is in shambles. He probably hasn't been there since. Rents his clothes, starts crying, cries up to heaven. All these people, great lamentation. Trust me, they're super duper sad. These are people who would have felt some type of way, and we don't know if the Assyrians are a part of this or not. And I'm going to keep them in the circle. They've got to stay on your minds. Verse 41. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress, until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary, and bare out the defiled stones into an unclean place. When as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profane, they thought it was best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show them what to do with them. Then they took the whole stones according to the law, and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary, and the things that were within the temple, and hollowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, and the altar of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burnt incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlesticks they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set loaves upon the temple, and appeared out of the veils, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Stop right there again. So now they're just taking all the dirty stuff out the temple, remaking everything that was in the temple the way it was before. Understand that he chose priests. Now, he got the guys that were of good conversation. Obviously, these are people who, when you're talking to them, you don't feel like they're a dirty dog. He didn't know who did or didn't sell out. You understand? So there's no way of knowing like which one of these guys is a sellout, which one of these guys isn't. So he just tried to put the dudes in charge who they thought should have been in charge. And as you can hear with the stones, they took those. You feel me? You know what I'm saying? And they placed them in a spot until like a prophet actually came, because they were like, well, we don't know what to do with those. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's just how it is. You know, people can say, you know, that all that's BS. No, 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 no. Because that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? So now we're just gonna keep it pushing. 47. Then they took the whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former. Nope, nope, nope. Verse 50. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlesticks they lighted, that they might give light into the temple. Furthermore, they set loaves upon the table, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 5th and 20th day of the 9th month, which is called the month of Caslo, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made. At what time and day the heathen had profaned it, even in that it was dedicated with songs and citherns and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell on their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple, and with crowns of gold, and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed, and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren, with the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 5th and 20th day of the month of Caslu, with mirth and gladness. Stop right there. Major party foul, because they created their own feast day, right on outside of the other feast days. Party foul, major one. But they were so happy that they wanted people to remember, because they thought that that was going to be a day, right on, that was going to be remembered forever. Like, this is when we actually made it from everything happening to us. Like, so this is like you winning. It's like anything else. You know, you can't predict what's going to happen in the future. You don't know what's going to happen. But they were happy. Once again, is this the right thing to do? Probably not. Is this the worst thing to do? For sure, sure it's not. Because they could have just laid down and died, I guess. And then people who talk bad about them might not even be alive to talk bad about them. Ain't that a great thought? Verse 60. And at that time also they builded up Mount Sion with high walls and strong towers round about it, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down, as they had done before. And they set up a garrison to keep it, fortified Bethsura to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. Then I'm going to step right into the next couple verses and I'm done. Now when the nations, this is verse 1 of chapter 5, now when the nations round about heard that the altar was built, and the sanctuary was renewed as before, it displeased them very much. Wherefore they thought to destroy the generation of Jacob that was among them, and thereupon they began to slay and destroy the people. Y'all, as we get further into this stuff, it's going to get crazier and crazier and crazier. So we're seeing the mistakes that are made through in and throughout. Once again, the people who wrote this don't want it to sound a certain way because they're trying to protect specific groups and specific parties. But what's best though is that we just keep in mind that they really actually can only protect who they can protect. They can't protect anyone else. You know, they're dead. So we have to read this and try to get what we can from it. I'm going to keep stressing the Assyrians and the Pharisee connect until it dawns on everyone that that's who they are. And then these are the people who were with us the entire time. And this is how they were able to get within and take over the way that they did. Appreciate you guys. Always remember that the Most High is watching everything that we do. Spiritual Gumbo, out.